Hello and welcome to Echo Radio, where we go over the most effective ways of running an online business so you can work smart and live free. This is the podcast for entrepreneurs who want to create, launch, and run an online business without the years of trial and error. Hosted by me, Adrien Harrison. Hello, ladies and germs, people and squirms. That doesn't make any sense, but it doesn't matter because I am now welcoming you to episode 1 of Echo Radio, my new podcast where it is my job to share the struggles, joys, failures, and triumphs of anyone who embodies pursuing their passion in some form or another. We tease out the thoughts, routines, and strategies that have gotten these entrepreneurs to where they are now so that you may learn and apply some of the valuable lessons back to your own lives. Their stories are meant to show you what life could be like on the adventurous pursuit of lovable work. Hopefully, one of them just might convince you to take the leap too. Today, I thought it'd be a good idea to kick this podcast off with an interview of, well, me, the interviewer, who I'd imagine you'd like to know of before listening to my nonsense any further. Nevertheless, here I am, in all my glory, being interviewed by a fellow Echo Studian, Walker Brandt. And we cover so much in this episode, like getting introduced to the freedoms of online business, dropping out of college, how to find your passion, a better alternative to the usual college model, how to educate yourself through digital role models, and how to convince your parents to let you take a gap year. Thank God you can access the show notes at echostudio.co/podcast, which I'd highly encourage, especially if you're a high school student. So, without further ado, here is episode 1 of Echo Radio, living to your fullest potential right out of high school. Enjoy.
Yo, this is Walker on another Podvark session. Today we are going to be interviewing Adrien Harrison,
What's up? Happy to be here.
who is a young entrepreneur. He just launched Echo Studios, and if you want to talk a little bit about it before we dive into some questions I've prepared.
Yeah, for sure. So Echo Studio is an online business consulting firm, and basically we do everything from website design to digital marketing, social media marketing of all sorts, email marketing, copywriting. Basically, in a nutshell, we consult your business and help you start up.
That's awesome. That's really cool. So just in terms of the way that you really understood that you wanted to pursue entrepreneuring, which is really an up-and-coming field that so many people are just going into for so many different reasons, how did you kind of identify this passion of yours initially?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I don't know, I never really wanted to go to college, which is a weird thing to say nowadays, but I don't know, it's becoming more and more normal thanks to the internet. And so I don't know, I really wanted to take a gap year actually right out of high school, and my parents were like, no, absolutely not. We're not allowing that. So I ended up at the University of St. Andrews, and it was good. I stayed there for 2 years, and then eventually I dropped out because I was like, I want to travel. That is my all-time life goal, my passion, and I think that's what led to the entrepreneurship because I was like, what is the only way for me to be able to continuously travel the world? And I would need a job that doesn't have a boss and who would let me go around the world. So I said, well, okay, there's several different options. They would have to have passive streams of income, so something that's set up, automated online so that I could work from anywhere. It would have to do with technology so I could work from my laptop, and it'd have to be service-based so that I could work with clients or sell digital products. So I think it was really kind of a backwards way, a more logical way of going about it. What is it that I want ultimately? And then entrepreneurship, more specifically online business, ended up being the answer for that.
That's really cool. So you mentioned that you dropped out of St. Andrews, which is a school located in Scotland, if I'm not mistaken. And so, like you said, dropping out of college is kind of unheard of nowadays. So what were some of your fears? Because I'm sure some people were skeptical about you doing it and really discouraged it.
Yeah.
What were some of your initial fears, and what really motivated you to kind of carry it out and
make that final decision?
Final decision, yeah.
So, I remember actually very specifically after my second exam of the 4 that I had left of my second year, I made the decision where I was done. I told myself, that's it. I've been played by this system too many times and it's really just not for me. I don't see the point. So I made the executive decision to drop out. And obviously you can imagine at that point, you're like, oh shit, how am I going to tell my parents this? What are they going to say? Am I really going to be able to follow through with it, etc.? I remember like calling them on the phone and breaking down basically and just being like, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. I don't want to do it. It doesn't make any sense. I would hand in papers to one tutor and get a good grade and hand in the same paper to another tutor and get a completely different grade. The system was absolutely rigged in so many ways. Like you'd study hours on end for an exam and then questions on the exam would be totally irrelevant. And I also just found like throughout my whole life, I was much more autodidactic. I preferred learning by myself on my computer, watching YouTube videos or just doing research because it's more targeted work. It's stuff that you really like. But yeah, so back to dropping out, I kind of just put my foot down, really. I thought, my parents resisted at first. They were like, you're being emotional. This is just a rash decision, etc. But over time, I remember coming out of my last exam. So I did those 2, called them, and then did the 2 other ones. And I ran out of there so freaking happy. Like I had a smile from ear to ear, literally skipping down the streets of St. Andrews because I was so ecstatic. And I felt like, okay, this is the right decision. I can't my body wouldn't be responding the way that it is right now if I felt any remorse. So I actually felt like this is right for me. And then it became more of a question about how am I going to make this work now? So the decision was like, okay, I know what I want. The fears are now irrelevant. It's how do I make this a viable thing?
Yeah. So I think we can both agree that college is kind of can be, not for everyone, but definitely can be a positive experience where it really teaches you about yourself. So in terms of finding the right school, because I know that you yourself struggled with really finding a good environment, and that's why, or is part of the reason that you dropped out of St. Andrews was because it really wasn't an environment that helped you thrive. So in terms of finding a college that's really right and can help you find your passion, can help you really develop into the person, and in an environment that's comforting and also rigorous academically, what would you really recommend when going through that college process and searching for the school that's right for you?
That is a tough question. It depends on a lot of factors. Honestly, if it were up to me, and a lot of parents will disagree with this, but I think the best move is to, out of high school, take a gap year, explore your interests, ask yourself all the hard questions people normally would only ask themselves at 40, like, what do I want to do with my life? Do I have a passion? What is the meaning of life? Like, there's a ton of different things that you're going to be very scary questions. But those, just even attempting to answer those questions is going to give you a much clearer picture of what you want. I mean, I remember specifically what I did. There was this blog I was reading at the time. Totally forgot what it was called, but it divided life into 7 different categories. And for each, it would ask you a bunch of questions, and it would ask you to define the ultimate version of yourself in each of those categories. So there was like, what is the ultimate social life that you want? What is the ultimate health style that you want? What is the ultimate financial life that you want? And through answering all those questions, you get a very clear idea of your ultimate self. And it also asks you to outline your ultimate day. Like, what would one day in your ultimate life look like? And doing that exercise totally changed my life because, as Peter Drucker would say, what gets measured gets managed. And so you basically set yourself up to compare yourself with your hero, your eventual ultimate self. And just that allows you to measure, okay, like where do I stand now as opposed to yesterday? Where will I stand tomorrow? And so that's going to give you a very clear idea of what do you want to do in life. And if you do that during the first gap year, the second recommendation is you do 2 years at a university that will allow you to achieve those goals that you've set for yourself. Then you take another gap year after 2 years and you re-explore. You probably either start an online business or you work at a job that you think will be right for you. And that's a chance to reevaluate, because the value of taking a gap year in between those college years is you get to go back and be like, I've had time away. I know what I did right the first time. I know what I did wrong. I know what I would like to take more advantage of this time. And the thing is, unless there's a line break, there's no reason for you to reevaluate. And you'll just float through those 4 years and then realize, oh, shit, there was this program that I could have taken advantage of at school, but I never thought about it because I was just stuck in that student 9 to 5 of here's an assignment, here's an essay, here's an exam, etc. And all you're doing is sticking to those course guidelines. And then the third one would be after college, and that will give you the time to reevaluate once again. You have now a pretty very, very concise idea of who you are, who you want to be, and how you're going to get there. And so then it's your choice. You can either work, you can start your own business. But the reason I bring all this back is like picking the right school is I don't think that's the right question. The right question is the right process for figuring out what you want to be doing, because that's the role of university, isn't it? In the very end, it's supposed to prepare you for a good and happy life. So if you go about it in another way where you're actually targeting those questions from the beginning, it doesn't really matter where you go to school. It just matters that you're getting closer and closer to the person you ultimately want to become.
That's some wise words, Adrien. So when you came out of college and you kind of made a game plan for yourself, you're like, hey, this is definitely the right thing to do. I want to go into entrepreneurship. This is my passion. I think, like you said, it's becoming much more easier to tap into initially, maybe not to really carry and make a successful business, but it definitely is a world that's becoming more and more competitive, and I think you can agree. But now that it is so competitive, what was your process? How did you really attack it from different angles? How did you become more educated? How did you really stand out from just any other ordinary person that drops everything one day and says, hey, I want to start a business?
4 words. The Tim Ferriss Show. Tim Ferriss became my absolute role model, idol, whatever. I saw so much of myself in him. And just a quick background so you guys have context here. Tim Ferriss is an entrepreneur, angel investor, basically a life hacker, optimizer. He's like the biggest life badass you'll ever come across. Super smart guy. You can find him on Google. Just type his name. But the reason I bring it up is his podcast is all about interviewing the world's top performers in all different fields of life and dissecting exactly what makes them tick, what habits, routines, strategies do they use or have used to become who they are. And because it gives you such a wide array of people in such different fields, I started to think like, okay, I resonate a lot with this guy who came on who was talking about life hacking and fitness. I didn't resonate so much with this woman who was talking about yada, 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 whatever. And that allowed me to say like, okay, well, I'm much more in tune with these people, and I would then follow up on their work. So I was now being introduced to the world's top performers that I wouldn't have otherwise known how to search. Like, how else would you figure that out? And what better way to get introduced to them than literally hear everything that made them who they are and what they do now. So all of these guys are super successful, so you can trust their opinion. which is a big deal. There's so much bullshit out there. It's a really saturated space. So I think like having a bunch of virtual mentors tell you what they do is the best way to figure out what you want to do.
It's like, maybe like you were mentioning, it's finding someone that really resonates with you. Tim Ferriss was your idol, was someone that kind of served as a mentor.
Yeah.
And I think Tim Ferriss is definitely someone that can be a mentor for many other kids that are my age, that are your age, and just trying to get into this field, because it is scary, it's something that you're passionate about, but it's also something that is just really hard to overcome and get into a position like his, because he's so educated. He's someone that is so knowledgeable in his field, and that's why he serves as such a great mentor, because he really causes you to think about entrepreneurship in a whole different way.
Yeah, totally.
And I think that is something that, but even before starting your business, and something that you did is really educate yourself in this new way. And that's kind of one way that separates you from just any other regular person that doesn't really do their research, doesn't really put in the work.
We call that front loading the work.
Yeah,
it's
exactly,
all about front loading. But definitely. And the thing is, like, one of the concepts that took me a long time to come to terms with was, when you're starting out, you just want the shortest, most effective method to success. Nobody wants to put in the work. Nobody wants to like spend those long days and stuff. And so when you look at someone like Tim Ferriss, for example, Casey Neistat actually was my role model before him. And he's all about the hustle life. So I love that. But basically, you need to look at it as a journey where it starts with just one tiny first step and persistence. That's it. If you just start and you persevere, no matter how slow you think you're going, you're beating out 99% of the competition because they quit. So figure out what it is you want to do and then just stick to it. Start and stick to it. And there's so many times where you're going to be like, I want to quit. Like, I'm not feeling it. Maybe it's not right for me. Everyone's telling me this is crazy. And you have to fight through that. You have to know in your bones. And this is why that exercise of outlining your ultimate self is so important, because you know what you want in the end. And you know what you're fighting for. And actually, Tim Ferriss was somebody, he I'm paraphrasing here, but he said something like, your goals need to be so unrealistic that they're worth fighting for. Because no dream is going to be like, well, I would like to incrementally increase my income by about $10 per month because that's a smart, realistic, timely goal. Like, nobody wants that. No one's going to fight for that. When times get tough, you're just going to be like, all right, I'm out of here. Like, this isn't even worth it. But if it's a dream worth fighting for, that's when it gets interesting. And the people who persevere will end up getting it. And the people who drop out never have the chance.
Yeah, so just in terms of taking that gap year, like you were mentioning, and really educating yourself and finding your mentor like Tim Ferriss, it's just, parents are really afraid of their kids taking gap years nowadays. Like you mentioned, especially dropping out, it's unheard of. So if you really want to take that gap year and find that time to really take a breath, not go right into another system of education where you pick your classes, do your assignments, and not really explore who you are as a person, how do you really kind of approach this difficult or fragile subject with your parents and inch them further and further towards allowing you to... That
is the question, isn't it?
Yeah, to take this gap year.
How would I go? I mean, I could counsel you to do it the way that I did it, but I think that's a terrible way to go about it, because I had to fight so much. And there's definitely better ways. What's interesting, actually? So Peter Thiel, who was one of the co-founders of PayPal, actually, he started something called the Thiel Foundation, where he actually paid students like a big amount of money. I think it was something like over 10K to drop out and just educate themselves or start their own business or whatever. So he's like a big self-starter advocate as well. But what's interesting about that is, if it comes from such an authority like Peter Thiel, right? This guy who's one of the most successful people on the planet. I mean, Elon Musk and Peter Thiel founded PayPal. That's the caliber we're talking about right now. And he's telling your child that he or she should drop out. Then parents are going to approach it in a different way. So if you don't have that, right, we're trying to think about how do you get an authority figure of that caliber, because that's the only language parents understand, right? I mean, like, the only other way is what I was doing, which is trying to convince them myself and showing them like all the work that I've been doing, or all these mentors that I've been listening to, or whatever. But it takes too much time, and if they're not into it, they're just not going to get it. So how do you get an external third party with authority to back your decision? That's the question I would be asking myself if I was in your shoes right now. So I guess it's going to come down to a lot of research. It's going to come down to landing a mentor yourself, and then having that mentor be so close to you that he's willing to speak to your parents for you on your behalf as well. And if you have a third party who's also an adult, who knows what they're talking about, telling your parents that it's a good idea, then I don't see why they would say no.
Yeah, so that's definitely the way to go about it. In terms of actually getting to the point where you can convince your parents, I think a gap year is really daunting. It's a whole year to really explore yourself as a person, and I think a lot of kids are concerned about costs. Are they going to be maybe diving into some of their college money to maintain a certain level of living while also being able to explore themselves, whether they want to travel, whether they want to maybe even start a business? So what would you recommend in terms of really coming up with a plan?
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, like, for a gap year, it's definitely much, much easier. It's temporary. The expectation is that you're going to go back to university to get your degree anyway. And if you convince them that the value of a gap year outweighs staying at university, there's no reason why they would say no. So the ways to go about that, making a plan is definitely number one. I would start with mapping out your ultimate self, hands down. I think you're not going to be able to convince your parents if you haven't even convinced yourself. So you need to figure out what you want, and then the plan will follow from that, because it'll make every goal more specific, so you can target each one and be like, this is what I'm going to do to achieve this goal. And if we're talking strictly financial, or to maximize your chances of being hired, or whatever you're looking for, I would definitely work at a real job. Land one that isn't an internship if possible. If not, internships are super valuable. You need to put ego aside and just do the work. Try to learn as much as you can. There's actually like so many ways that people land jobs through free work now. So they basically research the job that you're offering. They prove that they can do it, and then they do the work for you for free so that you hire them. And that's the way I would go about it. If I was going to look for a job right now, that's the way I would do it, because you're proving that you can do it to them. You're not going to be just a piece of paper on their desk with black ink as like a bland resume. I mean, they must plow through so many of those. It's almost impossible to stand out. You're much better off making a connection. So find the person that you want to work for, figure out how to land the job, prove that you can do the job to them. So show them through your skills that you can do it, and then do it for them for, let's say, 2 weeks of free work. Tell them like, look, I would really love to work for your company. I've proven in the past that I can do the work, and I'm actually going to do 2 weeks of free work for you right now, just so you can see that it's worth the investment. And after that, if you don't like it, no hard feelings, move on. Nobody's lost anything. They have nothing to lose. And if they do like it, you're hired. So think about it. You just spent 2 weeks, whereas a bunch of other applicants have gone like months on end through endless rounds of interviews, and they don't even know. And also, they're probably not going to be doing the work that they want to do. But since you choose the work that you're going to do for them because it's free work, when you get into the company, you'll have a much better say on what work you're going to be doing for them. So yeah, I mean, I think it's all about figuring it out for yourself, finding the right people who will help you achieve those things, and then making a plan, like actually writing it all out. Writing it down physiologically changes your body. So there's something about actually writing it down that'll make you more committed to it. It makes it real. And once you have that, just make it organized and show your parents, pitch them. It's basically a sales pitch. Like, yeah, here's what I want to do. Here are the results I'm expecting and how I'm going to get them. That's it.
Yeah. So now we're going to fold into talking actually more specifically about Adrien's business. So I'm actually an Echo Studio student.
An Echo Studian.
Yeah, exactly. Studian. There we go. And you've been helping me out recently validate and launch my own business, and it's been a really awesome experience. It's kind of I feel that it's actually more helpful than listening to someone over a podcast in a different way. I think that a mentor like Tim Ferriss educates you in a certain respect, and I think that actually having hands-on experience, really talking with someone,
right, it's interactive.
Yeah, exactly, and having like weekly calls to really motivate you and keep you moving forward, even when things seem like they're kind of standing still, is really beneficial. So maybe why don't you talk a little bit more about Echo Studio and how it's going to really help people
totally
start up their companies.
Yeah. So what Walker's going through right now actually is a beta test of one of our online courses about starting an online business. So I'm personally mentoring him. We have 1 hour weekly calls, and I walk him through the Echo Studio system. And it's basically all based on validated learning. So everything we do is validated as a profitable course of action before moving forward. This is a method that I've synthesized from Tim Ferriss, from Ramit Sethi, from the Lean Startup Method by Eric Ries, and Jay Abraham on Philosophy on Being Preeminent. So I've looked at these experts for a really long time, and I basically synthesized the best that they offer, and the result is the leanest startup. You're investing the smallest amount of resources for the highest amount of gains in the shortest amount of time. And that's what students need, because they don't have any money. So they need some wiggle room. They're going to make mistakes. There's all these unpredictable factors normally. Like, it's not the right way to go about it. So that's what it is. It's basically a surefire way of launching your business. So yeah, I mean, we're actually taking on people for that. So if anyone's interested, you can just go to echostudio.co and book a free 30-minute business breakthrough session with me. It's totally automatic. It'll get logged into my calendar and yours, and I'll just, answer any questions you have about it. So yeah.
Yeah, so I'm actually interning with you this summer, which is going to be a lot of fun. Some other kids are interning, so if you were to come on and you're interested, definitely give them a call. Entrepreneurship is a field, like we've said, that so many people are going into, and if you're really passionate about it, this is such a good experience. It's hard to really stress how valuable this is, It's not only going to educate you how to understand, you have a good idea, but how do you know if people are actually going to like it? Sure, it's smart, sure, it's interesting, but is it a necessity? Are people going to dig into their pocket to pay for your invention? Well, this whole course in working with people and understanding this business is going to help you understand, and it's really going to educate you where you're not going to lose thousands of dollars over an invention that you couldn't properly validate. Well, this is going to help you really validate those products, and it's gonna be a learning experience where you can understand this is something that I'm interested in. So there's nothing negative that's really going to come out of it either way. So
yeah,
everyone, please come on.
Yeah, I'm super pumped too, man. So we're finishing up right now our onboarding process for our summer interns. If any of you are interested, go to echostudio.co/careers, and you can apply there. I would hurry up though, because seats are going quick, and yeah, I mean, no, it'd be awesome if you're also like Walker's gonna be here, so you guys will get to talk to him and stuff.
Yeah, so
Work together.
there we go.
Yeah.
Cool. So, just before we leave, I think this is something important, is that Echo Studio is a company, like you said, that has launched and is taking on interns and kind of rolling into becoming a bigger business, and is transitioning a little bit. So in order to really prepare for this step, and this is not really applicable for kids that are just coming in and trying to find out about it, but how are you really making this next step into becoming a larger company?
Yeah. Okay.
Just before we head off, just because.
That's a okay. Big question. So, there are a billion different ways to grow a business, and you will literally bleed your ears out listening to marketers tell you all the different ways that it's possible. The more important thing is to figure out what is the best move for you, for your business. Listen to all the options and then stop listening because it's just noise. At that point, you will get stuck in what's called analysis paralysis, and you won't take action because you'll be stuck analyzing every course of action, like which is the best one. You got to just listen to all the options, shut it down, and then make a decision. So for me right now, the next course of action is what's called webinars, which are just digital seminars. And those are amazing because they basically do everything your business normally does in a very, very short time frame. Because you're creating content, right? You're creating a presentation, you're providing value, you're educating people. It's called edutainment now. It's education and entertainment. Nice. And you're selling, because at the end of the webinar, you're selling whatever you have to offer. So it's the best bang for buck, maximize your ROI method. And so that's what we're focusing on right now. Yeah.
Cool.
This was awesome.
This is nice. So again, where can they see what you're up to, Adrien? Where can they really get updates about what's
So
happening?
I'm on socials. I'm on Instagram. We're Echo Studio Insta. I've got College Dropout Doc. That's my personal account. On Facebook, Echo Studio, Pinterest, Twitter. I guess like the best way to follow me personally is College Dropout Doc on Instagram. Just follow what I'm up to, what's coming out on the business side of things, where am I traveling to. Yeah, it's more fun. But Echo Studio Insta is like, I'm super proud of this feed. It looks great. And there's basically what we call bite-sized knowledge posts. So each post has an educational quote and then a paragraph explaining how that quote relates to business. So there you go. There's your edutainment right there. But yeah, so I don't know. Follow on socials if you wanna keep up.
Cool. Thank you for being on the podcast today.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. It's been awesome. All right. Thank you for listening to episode 1. You can see all the show notes at echostudio.co/podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please let me know in the comments. I love hearing what people found valuable. And subscribe so you can get all our episodes in the future. Speaking of which, you're probably wondering what you can expect from Echo Radio in episodes to come. We'll be answering all the burning questions we get about starting your own online business and other goodies like case studies from actual Echo Studio clients and students alike, exclusive access to great deals from other entrepreneurs and online course creators, actionable step-by-step trainings and inside scoops on how to keep growing exponentially, and most importantly, the best kind of edutainment by yours truly. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, keep working smart and living free.